Anil, Bobby and Chintu jointly invest in a business and agreed to share the profit in proportion to their investments. Anil's share of investment is 70%. His share in profit decreases by 420 rupees if the overall profit goes down from 18 to 15%. Okay. Chintu's shares of profit increases by 80%. The overall profit goes up from 15 to 17%. The amount in Indian rupees invested by Bobby is which of these? Now, okay, let's start solving. Okay, we know that the profit will be in the ratio of the investments. Okay, and the critical thing to understand here will be this part. His profit decreases by 420 rupees if the overall profit goes down from 18% to 15%. 18% of what? 15% of what? Of the investment. Okay. So earlier, if the profit is 18% of the investment and it goes down to 15% of investment, his share of profit will come down by 420 rupees is what the question is telling us. Okay. Now let's start solving it. Okay. Okay. As far as Anil is concerned, 70% is his share of investment. Okay. So what will be his share of the profit? His share will be 70% of, if the profit is 18% of investment, so of 18% of investment, right? But if the profit is 15% of investment, it will be 70% of 15% of investment, right? What does the question say? The difference between the two is 420 rupees, right? Now please look at these two. This is common, this is common. So why am I writing two equations? Should I not straight away say the difference between these two, situations is 3% of investment, right? And Anil's share is 70%. So Anil's share is 70%. So 3% of investment is the difference between these two. So 70% of 3% of investment should be 420 rupees. Okay. And what is 70% of 3%? 2.1% of investment is 420 rupees. That means 1% of investment will be 420 upon 2.1, which is 200, or investment will be 20,000. Right? Simple calculation. You could have done it in a slightly different way also. Yeah, you could have, yeah, okay. You could have done it slightly. 70% is 420. So 3% of investment should be 420 upon 0.7, which is 600, right? And investment will be then 600 upon 0.03 or 60,000 by 3, which is 20,000. So which method you adopt is perfectly fine with me. Ultimately, we are saying A, B and C have made a total investment of 20,000, right? Okay. Now let's come to the other part, which is B and C. We need to find the Chintu's profit increases by 80. We need to find the amount invested by Bobby. So this is 14K. Okay. Let's look at Chintu's shares of profit increases by 80 rupees if the overall profit goes up from 15% to 17%. Okay. Now Chintu's share of profit increases by 80%, 80 rupees. If it goes up from 15 to 17%. So if I say Chintu has a share of C. Okay. So what does that mean? C percent of 2% of investment should be equal to, how much was it? 80. Isn't it? And what was the investment? 20,000. Was 20,000. Okay. So investment was 20,000. So what is 2% of 20,000? 10% of 20,000 is 200 rupees. Sorry, 2,000 rupees. 1% will be 200. So 400. So C percent of 400 is equal to 80. So what is C percent? 80 upon 40, 400, which is 1 by 5 or 20%. So Chintu has a 20% share, which is 20% of how much? 20,000, which is 4,000. Yeah, okay. Since I've written 4K, so let me 14K, so 4K. So what will this be? 2K. Correct answer? Choice 4. Where was the key out here? The key was this particular thing. I'll just repeat that part because I think that is where students typically tend to get confused. As far as Anil is concerned, his share of profit is 70%. His share is 70% of the profit since he has an investment of 70%. And if the profit goes from 18% to 15%, his loss is going to be 3% of the investment. And as per the question, this is going to be 420 rupees. Similarly, when we looked at C, we said C percent of 2% of investment is equal to, as per the question, 80 rupees. So you find I from here, substitute here, find C. Once you find C, you will be able to find the share of B also. Raj invested 10,000 in a fund. At the end of first year, he incurred a loss, but his balance was more than 5,000 rupees. Okay. So what was his loss? Less than 50%. Okay. His loss has to be less than 50% because his balance from 10,000, he was more than 5,000. The balance when invested for another year grew, and the percentage growth in the second year was 5 times the percentage loss in the first year. Okay. If the gain from the gain of Raj from the initial investment over 2-year period is 35%, then the percentage loss in the first year is how much? Okay. So what do we have? We have 10K initially. Okay. He has some X% loss. So I'm indicating it with a minus sign. And he has some amount, we'll come back to that later. And then he have 5X% profit. So that finally what he gets is plus 35%. Is this not 2 successive increments? A loss of X% followed by an overall. Why am I saying the 35%? Because this is what the question says. This has become 13,500. Okay. From the initial investment over the 2-year period. That means from here to here, there is a profit of 35%. So which is I said, there's 2 successive increments. A plus B plus this should be equal to 35. Okay. Simple equation, you can solve it to get the answer. But this is not the recommended method because there are choices in front of you. Okay. Let's do it with the help of choices. I am leaving this particular thing for you to solve. And when you solve, you will understand why choice 3 is given. Okay. 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 Great. So let's now solve the question. Okay. You can solve the equation yourself. That equation is not something which I am very keen on solving. The solution gives it to you. Okay. Now what happens? Initially you have 10K. After 1 year, you are greater than 5K, but you have a loss. And then you have a profit. Okay, and then overall it is becoming plus 35%. Okay, plus 35%. So that it becomes, that means 13,500. First of all, since you'll be greater than 5,000, that means your loss will be less than 50%. Choice 3 is wrong because percentage loss in the first year is what we are looking for. Percentage loss in the first year cannot be 70%. It has to be less than 50%. So, okay. Out of the remaining 3 choices, which one should you check? The middle choice. Why middle choice? Because if this is not the answer, it will tell me whether my answer is greater than 10% or less than 10%. Okay. And I'll be able to get the answer. So let us start by checking 10%. If the loss is minus 10% here, or if the loss is 10%, which means the profit is minus 10%, what will this become? 9,000. If the loss is 10% here, in this case, I should have a profit of 50%. How much does it, what is 50% of 9,000? 4,500. It will become 13,500. That means this satisfies or this is the answer. Alternately, what you could have done? Minus 10 plus 50 minus 10 into 50 by 100. If this is equal to 35, is the correct answer? Otherwise not. So what does this become? Minus 10 plus 50 is 40. And this is going to be minus 5, 35% satisfies. Choice 1 becomes the answer. Okay. Now let me come to another aspect, or rather connected to this only. What if we had checked for choice, let's say 2? If we check for choice 2, what does it tell us? That means it is a loss of 5% followed by a profit of 5 times, which is 25%. Because loss in the second year is, profit in the second year is 5 times the loss in the percentage loss in the first year. So A plus B What will this mean? Plus. How much does it become? 25, 4. So this becomes 20 minus 1.25, which is equal to 18.75%, which is less than 35%, which means my answer should be greater than 5%. But that does not help us. If I'm starting from here, if this is not the answer, both of the remaining are going to be greater than 5% only, which is why you should always start with a number which is in the middle of the range, because if it does not give you the answer, or if it is not the answer, it will at least tell you whether your answer should be greater or lesser. If it says your answer is greater, 15 becomes the answer. If it says your answer should be lesser, answer becomes choice 2, 5. But the right approach always is to pick up the middle choice and the choice which is easy to calculate. In this case, both the things happened here. Identical chocolate pieces are sold in boxes of two sizes, small and large. Large box is sold for twice the price of the small box. The selling price per gram of chocolate in the large box is 12% less than the small box. Okay. Then the percentage by which the weight of chocolate in the large box exceeds the small box is nearest to. What do we need to find? We need to find weight of chocolates in the large box. We need to find the weight of chocolates in the small box and the percentage change. This is what we need to find. Weight of chocolates, percentage by which weight of chocolates in the large box exceeds that in the small box. Okay. After all, if you are talking about percentage change, it will be with respect to the small box. Okay. Now, before we go further, let's simplify this. Okay. What is this? Weight of chocolates in the large. Isn't it? Are these two not the same? And this is the preferred method. This is a preferred method from a calculation perspective, because this means I need to calculate both of them and find the difference and then divide. What does this mean? This means I have the opportunity, I don't need to calculate. I'll just write whatever numbers come here and here and cancel out. Okay. So the first thing in this kind of a question is, this is not the preferred method, this is the preferred calculation technique from your point of view. Okay. That's the first thing. Second, this kind of a question, please don't use variables. What does the question say? Large box is sold for twice the price of small box. Many times people say, let the small box be for P rupees and the large box be 2p rupees. Stupidity of the highest order. Why don't you take 100 and 200? Numbers are always easier to handle rather than variables. Numbers can be cancelled out, variables may or may not get cancelled out. So please work with numbers, not with variables. Now let's do this question using my method, which is using numbers and using this calculation technique. Okay. Now we have the large box and the small box. Okay. What is the price? Which in rupees? I will say let the small box be for 100 rupees, large box be for 200 rupees. Why? Because it says large box is sold for twice the price of the small box. Right. Next, selling price per gram of chocolate in the large box is 12% lower than that in the small box. Okay. So selling price of chocolate per gram, so rupees per gram. Let me assume small box is 100 rupees per gram, which means the small box has only 1 gram. So what will it be for the large box? Large box is 12% less, so 88 rupees per gram. So what does this become? 200 upon 88. What do we need to find? Weight of large box upon weight of small box minus 1 into 100. Now please look at these calculations, that my task becomes easier. So what does it become? 200 by 88. I'm just writing this step to explain, otherwise I would not have written this step. Okay. Is this not the same as writing it as? Yeah. Yeah. And what's the advantage? You can cancel out numbers. 8 into 11, 8 into 25. So what does it become? 25 by 11 minus 1. 25 by 11 minus 1, which is nothing but 14 by 11, 25 minus 11, so 14 by 11. So 14 by 11 should be the answer in percentage terms. So what is 14 by 11 going to be? I'll just erase this part. Okay. Very quickly. What is 14 by 11? 1 plus 3 by 11. What is 1? In percentage terms, it is 100%. What is 1 by 11? 1 by 11 is 9.09%. So 3 by 11 should be 27.27%. So what should my answer be? 127% among the choices. Okay. From a calculation perspective, couple of things. Again, I'm repeating what I've said. Please use numbers. Don't go with variables. Variables will make your life a little more miserable. Second thing, what I want you to remember is when you have to take a percentage change, it is always final by initial minus 1. Don't go for final minus initial upon initial. This is going to be more calculation intensive and hence it should be avoided. Amal purchases some pens at rupees 8 each. To sell these, he hires an employee at a fixed wage. He sells 100 of these pens at rupees 12 each. If the remaining pens are sold at 11 each, then he makes a net profit of rupees 300. While he makes a loss of 300 if the remaining pens are sold at 9 each. What is the wage of the employee? Okay. Yeah, we can assume the wage of the employee and look at this, but there's something critical which I'll come back in a little while, which will help you save time if you are observant enough. Okay. Now, he purchases some pens at 8 rupees each. To sell these, he hires an employee at a fixed wage. Let me say the wage is W. The employee is paid W rupees. Okay. He sells 100 of these pens at 12 rupees each. His cost was 8 rupees. He's selling it at 12 rupees. These 100 pens are sold at 12 rupees. So his profit per pen here is 400 rupees. So 400 rupees is the profit on account of these 100 pens. Remaining pens are X. Let me assume the remaining pens to be X in number. Are sold at 11 rupees each. That means his profit will be 3 rupees per pen. So plus 3X. Okay. So this becomes the total profit. He ends up making a net profit of 300. Why? Because he also has to pay the employee W rupees. So profit on pens minus the wage of the employee is equal to 300 rupees. That's what we have been told. Okay. Now, while he makes a net loss of rupees 300, net loss of 300. If the remaining pens are sold at rupees 9 each, if they are sold at rupees 9 each, what does it mean? X rupees. Now, please note at this thing. What is the difference between these two equations? Okay, I'll just remove this part. Yeah. Look at these two equations. What is the difference? 400 is the same. The difference is only here. What is the difference between these two? 2x. X should be equal to 300. Okay. So what does it become? 400. If x is 300 plus 900 minus w is equal to 300. So what should be w? W should be equal to 1000. Okay. Now this is something you could have noticed while reading the question. Okay. Had you noticed that this entire equation was not required, let me tell you how this question could have been attempted if you were observant enough and if you don't have a pen in hand. The problem is most of the time when you are reading the question, you are writing along with it and hence you are not focusing on the question. My recommendation to students always is please don't keep a pen in hand. Okay. Let's come here. Okay. 8 rupees to sell, he hires an employee at a fixed wage. He sells 100 at 12 each. Remaining pens are sold at 11 each. Okay. He makes a net profit of 300 while he makes a net loss of 300 if the remaining. So the only thing which is changing from the first to the second is instead of 11 rupees, he's selling it for 9 rupees. So when he goes down from 11 for X pens, when instead of 11 rupees, he comes down to 9 rupees, he's losing 2X rupees. He's losing 2X rupees. And what does it mean? From plus 300, he becomes minus 300. So this is equal to minus 600. So X is equal to 300. Obviously, after that, you'll have to do the same part again. But all I'm saying is, you could have saved the time of writing to in the equation and then coming to the answer. Anil invests some money at a fixed rate of interest compounded annually. If the interest accrued during the second and third year, 806.25 and 866.72 respectively, the interest accrued in Indian rupees during the fourth year is nearer to how much? Okay. Okay. Now, couple of things as far as this question is concerned. Look at the numbers and the choices. Definitely not convenient numbers. Okay. Difficult to work with. By and large, 806.25, 866.72, or these choices, all of them are numbers and decimal and definitely don't make me comfortable. I would want to avoid using these. Okay. Secondly, the choices out here are fairly close. 926.84, 929, 931, 934. Approximation opportunities are unlikely to be there, or approximation is going to be a bit difficult to work with. Okay, we can still do that, but all I'm saying, these are two things which you should be able to look at this question and be at least clear. Okay, if I have to approximate, I should be a little careful. Okay, these are two things. Okay, thirdly, there's a question in CAT. Please use a calculator. CAT has provided you with a calculator. Please use it. This is the kind of question for which calculator should be used. If you don't use a calculator, you will be wasting a lot of time for yourself. Okay. Now let's come down to solving the question. But before we solve the question, let me give you a basic concept. Let me assume my principal is equal to 100 rupees and rate of interest is 10%. Okay. Now, that means if my principal is 100 rupees, it will become 110. Year 2, it will become 121. Year 3, it will become 133.1. Okay, and so on and so forth. Now, what is the interest you have received in the first year? 10 rupees. Interest in the second year, 11 rupees. Interest in the third year, 12 rupees. Now, what is this increase, 10 to 11? 10%. 11 to, sorry, not 12, 12.1. 10%. What should be the interest for the next year? Increase it by another 10%. What is 10% of 12.1? 1.21. So 10% only 1.21, so it will become 13.31. So this should be 13.31. Check. What is 10% of 133.1? It is 10%. Okay. So what is it telling you? Whatever is the percentage increase from here to here is going to be the percentage increase going forward also. So if the rate of interest is X%, the interest in compounding every year, the interest will increase by X%. From 0th year to first year, it went up by 10%. Okay. So it was 10 rupees, sorry. From first year to second year, increase of 10%. From 10 to 11. 11 to 12.1, 10%. 12 to 13.1, 10%. And this is the basic concept which you should be applying for this question. My starting point would be, if there is a question in CAT, I will say, dimag nahi lagana mujhe bilkul. I will say, year 3, 866.72. Okay. Interest accrued during second year, this is interest. 806.25. Okay. So what should be year 4? What is this increase? This is 866.72 upon 806.25 into 866.72. Please use a calculator and do the stupid question. This is a question which in CAT should be done using a calculator. And given the choices which are there, it will make your life a little miserable if you don't use a calculator, and I will strongly recommend. Okay. So again, if we are looking at year 4 just for your benefit, this is an X% increase, so this should also be an X% increase. That is all I'm saying. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, supposing this question is not in CAT but in other exams, what do we do? IFT, ZAT, NMAT, they don't provide you with a calculator, and you have time and you want to do this question. What is the right approach for this question? Great, let's look at that. Okay, now year 2, year 3, okay. That is 866.72. What is the interest accrued? 72 minus 25 will be 52.47, 60.47. Can I say year 4 should be greater than the interest which you will receive in the next year is going to be slightly more than this. Okay? Okay. This is going to be more than this. Okay, by at least this much amount. So how much does it become? 866 plus 60 makes it 926. 926, about slightly more than 927 rupees. My answer has to be slightly more than 927. Does not help us much. Answer could be any of these. This I think is not going to be the answer, but it does not be. Why? Because the choices are close. Okay, and which is what I said at the beginning. Close choices mean that you will have to do the calculation, which is why for CAT I straight away said use a calculator, don't waste time. But we are looking at the other exams. So what should we do? We need to calculate them. How will you calculate? Let's look at this part. Okay. So what is the interest we have? 60.47. Interest of 60.47 has been received on 806.25. Can I say this should be approximately the same as 60 upon 800? Isn't it? Should be approximately the same, which is equal to 6 by 8 is 3/4 or 75%, or 60 by 80 should be 6 by 80 should be 7.5%. The rate of interest, I'll take it to be 7.5%. Okay. So what should be the next one? This should go up by 866.72 should be increased by 7.5%. That should be my answer. Okay. What is 7.5% of 866? We don't know. Let's look at that part. Let's look at how to calculate that part also. 10% of 866.72 will be 86.67. To make my calculation again simple, I will take it to be 86.68. Okay. What will be 2.5%? $86.68 or 860, sorry. I'm sorry, yeah. What will be 2.5% of 866.72? If 10% is this, 2.5% will be 1/4. Can I say this should be less than 22 and more than 21? 21 into 4 is 84, 22 into 4 is 88. 86.68 lies between 84 and 88. So what should be 7.5%? It should be less than 66, more than 63. So what should my answer be? My answer should lie between 866.72 plus 66 and plus 63. My answer has to be between these two numbers. Okay. So let's check out. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so how much is 866 plus 63? 866 plus 63 will be 929.72, and hence this will be 932.72. Your answer needs to be between 929.72 and 932.72. So correct answer, choice 1. Okay, but again repeating, in CAT this is a question which should be done by using a calculator. In IFT, in NMAT, in ZAT, there's a question you come back to later if you have time, because the calculations are difficult and the choices are fairly close to each other.